Welcome, it's Senor MA. Today I'd like to talk about flashcards and how to use them. This is addressed to both parents and students. So as I have studied Spanish throughout high school and throughout college, I've used flashcards to build my vocabulary. And I think the greater your vocabulary and the greater your ability to use these words over a variety of settings and situations, the more successful you are going to feel and the more confident and more willing you're going to be to speak. So that's why I think it's important. So I'm going to give students usually 20 vocabulary words on an 8x11 chart, piece of paper every week to practice, because over time that's going to build their vocabulary and help them to be more successful as they work. So when I got my flashcards ready in high school, I would go to the back of the book and take that unit's vocabulary, put them on index cards. I'm hoping that by using the Quizlet cards, although they're not as sturdy, it's going to be a much faster process. They can take them home, cut them up, and use them. Also, if students need to cut on their own, they can come after class during lunch or advisory to do so. So sets like these, they're great, and I highly advise students to use them if they think that they want to continue to build their vocabulary. But the vocabulary that I'm going to give to them in class is what they will be tested on. So how long will it take students to learn 20 vocabulary words? Well, the first thing I want to say is it shouldn't take more than a week. And one of the reasons why I want to keep pushing for vocabulary cards, I'm going to keep telling students this: success is a habit. And when I researched online, I found that Aristotle said it better than I did. We are what we repeatedly do. So the habits that we make are the success that we have. Excellence is not an act. It is a habit. So we can't just do it one time. We can't be just studying really hard for class and then not do it at home. We need to take the time, and we need to make sure that we are being successful in and out of the classroom. So part of this process is we need to learn about the line of forgetting. So we're using flashcards because, number one, they are something that we can hold in our hands, we can count them, and we can also annotate and mark them. But most importantly, we know how many we need to use and learn. So what I'd like to tell you about right now is the curve of forgetting. So we've known about this for 60 years, 70 actually. So what happens is to explain what happens, here's your memory and here's the amount of time that you're studying this vocabulary. So if you learn it in class, chances are 20 to 30 minutes after class you're going to forget it. So what do? So we go back and we study it again the next day. Now as you see, chances are if you only study it once, you're going to forget it most likely within 6 days. Our brain is trained to do that. The next day, if we practice it, that time curve takes a lot less time to forget this information. The more and more we do it, the more we commit it to memory, and the less likely it is that we are going to forget it, and actually we'll be able to master it. So because I wanted to make sure that I was teaching and using what I'm preaching, I decided, because I'm studying a foreign language, that I would go online and find the top 100 words on Quizlet, and I found a vocabulary deck, printed them out, and I tested myself. And I think that's a great thing for students to do at the beginning. So what I found out was, out of 100 words, there were 27 words that I already knew. So I put that in my pile. So close to 30%, that's a good start. Now unfortunately, what was really challenging was I discovered that 43 words were very hard for me, and chances are I would need to practice them. And then finally, cognates. So students have been hearing the word cognate a lot in class. What is a cognate? A cognate is a word that exists between two languages. So English and Spanish has a lot of cognates, and we reviewed over this in class, and I'm going to come back to them because once I just say, hey, so-and-so, what does that word look like in English? They might say, oh, I got it. So this is a great thing to know. But one thing, to talk about these three piles that are in front of me. So I'm going to continually come back to these when I do review, these 27 words. I want to make sure that I continually know them and practice them. So every 2 to 3 days, I might go back and study the no pile. Now, what I'm going to focus on first is the hard pile, because I want the maximum exposure to these words. And then finally, I might mix them in or I might put them at the end, but I'm going to make sure that these 30 cognates are something that I know, but this is not going to be the focus of what I know. If I know 27 and I know these 30, that still leaves at least 43 words that I'm not confident about. So this is something I want to come back to. So I might pick for one day to actively learn and to practice, to put it into the pile, and to quiz myself on the next day, 5 to 10 words. So once I get those 5 to 10 words, I'm already a quarter of the way through my hard pile. And if students are taking this 5 words a day out of a deck of 20, and chances are there's words that they know or there's words that are cognates, that means that within less than 4 days, they'll be able to successfully master these vocabulary words and use them on assessment. So once you get to the hardest of the hard words, what I want to encourage students to do is to create a mnemonic. So I will create a future video on what is a mnemonic, but here's the short story. A mnemonic is, for example, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, to remember the order of operations. This is a rule, a poem, a joke. It uses the sound. It uses how it's spelt. Anything that is going to help you to remember a word, you need to sit down and look at it and say, how can I better remember this word? What patterns can I see? These are an aid. Once eventually students are confident and successful, they won't need the mnemonic anymore. You'll probably remember what those mnemonics are. But the goal is to make sure that you get these core vocabulary words. So in review, here's the 3 things I want students to remember. Number 1, do flashcards because success is a habit. Number 2, actively take time to practice these words over a long period of time so that you commit them to memory. All right? And finally, break them up into groups and make sure you're continually putting an emphasis on mastering the hardest words, because you can cheat yourself. And when you cheat yourself, inevitably where you get hit is when you have to take a test or when you need to use it the most. So I hope students and parents can use this information about how the brain works and how we can better master vocabulary and to be successful in class. Thank you very much, and please look forward to other videos. Bye.